Hi, my name is Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a review of my year in reading in 2023. So we'll look back at my goals that I set at the start of the year, see how well I have achieved those or not. And we'll have a look at all the stats, so all the Storygraph stats in terms of number of books read, genres, ratings, also some stats that I have come up with myself in terms of where my books have come from, whether they've been from my shelf, whether they've been from the library, and we will of course look at DNF rates for the year, as I know that's what you're all here for. We'll kick it off with the number of books that I read in 2023, and that was 108 books. I'll insert the graphs from Storygraph as we go. My Storygraph will be linked down below, so please feel free to add me as a friend on there if you would like to. So I read 108 books in 2023, which equates to 32,938 pages. I didn't set myself a target in terms of the number of books I wanted to read in 2023. I've not done that for a few years now, just because I don't find there's any benefit in doing that for me personally. By comparison, in 2022 I read 154 books, and the year before I read 193 books. So I knew I was going to read fewer books this year compared to last year, because I have started a new job. I work full time now. It's not a massive difference in terms of hours. It's only like 6 and a bit extra hours a week. But I do have a commute, which I never used to have. I used to be able to walk to work in 5 minutes, whereas now I have a drive of between 30 minutes on a good day up to an hour each way. So in total, it's about 2 to 3 hours less free time each weekday that I have now in the new job. Hence, I've read fewer books, which is fine. That was to be expected. Obviously, I would love to just spend all day, every day reading and napping and hanging out with my cat. That would be the perfect life. But you know, we have to go to work to earn the pennies. So 108 books read. In terms of moods, mysterious, dark, reflective, emotional, and tense are my top moods. I think that's pretty similar to last year. That tends to be what I lean towards. And mysterious is definitely like my favourite mood in a book. On to the pacing. So 53% medium paced, 21% slow paced, and 26% fast paced. That again is very similar to last year. Looking at page numbers now, this is slightly different to the previous year. So 50% of the books that I picked up in 2023 were actually under 300 pages. 43% were between 300 to 499 pages, and 7% were over 500 pages. So I have read slightly more shorter books this year compared to last year, but also a couple of extra chunksters at the other end as well. According to Storygraph, I've read 8 books that were over 500 pages long. Those books were 2 books by Sarah Waters, which were The Paying Guests and The Little Stranger, 2 books by Thomas Hardy, Desperate Remedies and Jude the Obscure. Then we also have The Shards by Bret Easton Ellis, The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, The Bee Sting by Paul Murray, and Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. So I've enjoyed all those longer books actually. I do quite like getting into a chunkster of a book. In terms of the fiction non-fiction split, so 94% of my reading in 2023 was fiction and 6% was non-fiction, which you may think is very little. However, the previous year, 2022, I read 1% non-fiction. I'm really not a big non-fiction reader, so to have read 6% non-fiction is actually pretty good going for me. That equates to 6 books. So 2 of those were celebrity memoirs, Page Boy by Elliot Page and The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. Then 3 were LGBTQ plus non-fiction, so Ace by Angela Chen, None of the Above by Travis Alabanza, and Outrageous by Paul Barker? One moment. Paul Baker. And then the other non-fiction was a essay collection by George Orwell called Why I Write. So it was quite a good year for non-fiction. On to genres now. So this is quite interesting to me anyway. Up until the last couple of months, the top genre or category, because some of these like are not actually genres, are they? But the top category was LGBTQ plus, and it's now fallen ever so slightly. So my top category for the year was literary fiction, that vague genre, which I really don't like the title of. I mean, possibly because I have done some book prize reading for the Women's Prize and the Booker Prize, although saying that I feel like I DNF'd a fair few of them, and this doesn't take into account DNFs. So after literary, the next sort of 3 or 4 genres, which are almost neck and neck, are thriller, mystery, LGBTQ plus and horror. So horror is quite high for me. I feel like I have been reading more horror in the last couple of years than I have done previously. I read a lot of horror in October, which I think continued on into November, and it is something that I've had a bit of a taste for of late. The next category down is contemporary, and then almost the same amount of classics, historical and crime. So I think crime over the last few years has sort of dropped down in being one of my most read genres, probably because I read less sort of straight crime novels, but thriller and mystery are still quite high up, because obviously books can fall into more than one of these genres or categories. So yeah, fewer crime novels, but I still do like a thrilling mystery. Horror's increased and LGBTQ has increased as well. One of my goals, which I'll mention now, was I wanted to participate in the Queer TBR Tackle. So I set a list of queer books that I wanted to read in 2023. I read 12 out of the 18 books that I listed, so I didn't make it to all of them. Some of them are still on the TBR. But in addition to that, I read a lot more LGBTQ books that I hadn't even specified that I wanted to read at the start of the year. So that was good. Next, okay, format. So 96% of my reading was in a physical form and 4% was audio, which seems very little to most people, but actually that's quite a lot for me. So let's just see. So I actually listened to 4 audiobooks in 2023, which is a lot for me because I'm not a big audiobook listener. It's something I am starting to get myself used to a little bit more. So the audiobooks I listened to were The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, Children of Paradise by Camilla Gradova, I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel, and Pearl by Sean Hughes, all of which I enjoyed. Onto my most read authors in 2023 then, you can see on this little graph here. So we've got a tie between Jeff Vandermeer and Sarah Waters. One of my goals for 2023 was to complete my reread of all of Sarah Waters' novels, which I have done now. So I've reread all 6 of her books, 3 of which I read in the last year, and I also read Jeff Vandermeer's trilogy, what's it called? The Southern Reach trilogy. Although I think there's going to be a 4th book, so it will no longer be a trilogy. But I read all 3 of those in 2023 as well. And then I read 2 books each by Ian McEwan, Thomas Hardy, Anthony Barclay, T. Kingfisher, Celia Fremlin and Agatha Christie. Down to the star ratings then. So my average rating for the books that I read in 2023 was 3.42%. Last year it was 3.34%, so very similar. Now when I give a book 3 stars, that means I liked it. That means it's a definite positive outcome. I know for some people 3 stars is sort of like not a great rating, but it means it was good. It means I enjoyed it. So that's pretty good. So it means that, let me just check my stats here. I only completed 17 books that I ended up rating under 3 stars. So it means in terms of the books I completed, 84% got 3 stars or more from me, which I think is pretty good going. That means 84% of the books that I finished, I actively liked. And I think that's as high as it is because I have quite a high DNF rate, which we will come on to in a moment. So the next thing I wanted to look at was how many books I had reread in 2023. So in 2022, I set a specific rereading goal. I think I reread about 12 books and that worked really well. I thought I didn't reread that many books in 2023, but it turns out I did reread 12 books. However, I feel like those are slightly weighted towards rereading I've done at the end of the year. And also 3 of those books, I think it was 3, I reread for my library book club. So not all of those I would have actively chose to reread myself at this point, if you see what I mean. So in terms of the 12 books that I reread, the 3 I reread for my library book club were The Doll Factory by Elizabeth McNeill, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. Those 2 I possibly wouldn't necessarily have picked up myself this year, but also The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, which is one I probably would have wanted to reread anyway sometime soon. We also have 3 Sarah Waters books that I reread: The Little Stranger, The Paying Guest and Tipping the Velvet, 2 Agatha Christie's, A Pocket Full of Rye and The Sitterford Mystery. Then we have My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, which I ended up reading for my work book club, but I was going to be rereading it towards the end of the year anyway. And then my other rereads were Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which I can now confirm as possibly my favourite classic of all time. Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, and also Carol by Patricia Highsmith. There were also 3 additional books that I picked up as rereads, but I DNF'd them. And those were They Do It With Mirrors by Agatha Christie, Us by David Nichols, which I was reading for my work book club and just wasn't interested in getting through again really, and also Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. I do love du Maurier, but I'm just not a fan of Jamaica Inn. So I have done more rereading than I was expecting this year, which is interesting. The next thing I looked at was where the books came from, in terms of were the books from my shelves or were they from the library. One of my goals for 2023 was to do a Read What You Own challenge. So at the start of 2023, I did a 25 book Read What You Own challenge where I had to read 25 books from my shelves before getting any books out of the library or buying any new books, and I did complete that challenge. And another goal was to continue to read books from my shelves, so not just to get library books out all the time, which is what I tend to do. So in terms of the books that I read, so not talking about DNFs, in terms of the books that I read, 54% of those came from the library. 34% were books that I owned that were on my shelves, and then 11% were rereads. I've sort of classed rereads as a separate category in itself. So about half were from the library, which was pretty good. But when you look at the books that I have DNF'd and where they come from, 72% of the books I DNF'd came from the library and 22% came from my own bookshelves. So overall, it means that in terms of all the books I picked up in 2023, whether I completed reading them or whether I DNF'd them, around 2/3 of the books I picked up came from the library, which is actually very similar to that stat for 2022. So that's a little bit disappointing because I maybe would have expected it to be slightly more books from my shelves as opposed to from the library because of doing the 25 book Read What You Own challenge at the start of the year. But I guess I must have done that and then compensated by getting more library books out. I mean, it's still not terrible, to be honest, because historically, like, a good 80% of my reading used to come from the library. So at least I am picking up a third of what I read is from my shelves. But it's something I maybe need to focus on for 2023. And then DNFs. So, DNFs. In terms of my DNF rate for the library books that I have got out in 2023, 41% of the library books that I got out, I ended up DNFing. In terms of my owned books, so the books that I picked up from my own shelves, I DNF'd 26% of those. So I think it makes sense that my DNF rate for the library books is going to be higher than my owned books because with my owned books, they are more likely to be books that I have specifically sought out. They're not all, because some of them are from like book subscriptions and things like that, but generally speaking, if I buy a book, I'm pretty sure I'm going to like it. A DNF rate of 41% from the library I think is fine, because I will take a lot more risks with library books. I'll pick up, you know, prize nominated books that even though I know I'm probably not going to like them, but I'll give them a go. It's fine, it's risk free if it's from the library. So my overall DNF rate for 2023 comes to 34.9%. So the rate for 2022 was 31.8%. So I have DNFs sort of slightly more percentage wise in 2023 than I did the previous year, but I've only been keeping a record of my DNFs for maybe 2 or 3 years, and it's pretty much steady at around a third of the books I pick up I end up DNFing. I think that is a really positive thing for my reading, because as I showed with the star rating stat, 84% of the books I've completed I rate 3 or above, i.e. I actively like them, and I think that's because I DNF as much as I do. I know some people will never DNF, and obviously, you know, to each their own. If that works for them, then great. I know if I made myself finish every book, I would just not want to keep reading. I would find other things to do rather than pick up a book that I wasn't enjoying. So DNFing definitely benefits my reading. So looking back at my goals then that I set myself for 2023, I've mentioned the queer TBR tackle, which I made a decent amount of sort of progress with, and as I say, I did pick up a lot of other LGBTQ books as well in 2023. I may do a separate video on those. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. So in terms of the goals for 2023, I wanted to complete my little project of rereading all of Sarah Waters' books, which I have now done, and I do want to do a video soon. I mean, what does soon mean? But I do want to do a video sort of reflecting on all of Sarah Waters' novels and maybe where to start with them if you've not read any before. Another goal was to do the Read What You Own challenge of 25 books. I did do that. And the final goal was to continue to read books from my shelves, which I kind of did, but I could have done more on. So, in summary, I feel like that's been a good reading year. I'm sort of pleased with that. I have broad ideas of some of the goals I want for 2024, but I only just looked at these stats this morning, so I do want to have a think and maybe refine some of my goals in light of these stats. In particular, how I want to sort of target reading from my shelves and how specific I want to be about that goal. So soon there will be a goal video for 2024, and I'll also be doing probably a couple of videos talking about my sort of favourite books of 2023, my most notable reads of the year. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know how you have got on with your reading goals in 2023, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.